September 1941. Over the coast of France, British Spitfire pilots encountered something that would change the course of the air war forever. A new German fighter appeared in the skies, compact, powerful, and devastatingly effective. The Focke Wulf 190 had arrived, and Allied air superiority would never be the same. For nearly 2 years, the supermarine Spitfire had ruled European skies, but the appearance of Kurt Tank's masterpiece shifted the balance of power overnight. This is the story of the aircraft that terrified Allied pilots, challenged the myth of British air superiority, and became one of the most feared fighters of World War II. In the late 1930s, the Luftwaffe's primary fighter was the Messerschmitt Bf 109. While effective, the 109 had limitations. Its narrow landing gear made ground handling treacherous. Its enclosed cockpit offered poor visibility, and its inline engine was vulnerable to combat damage. The German Air Ministry recognized they needed an alternative, a complementary fighter that could address these weaknesses. Enter Kurt Tank, technical director at Focke Wulf Flugzeugbau. Tank was not just an engineer. He was a pilot who understood what fighters needed from a pilot's perspective. In 1938, he began designing what would become the FW-190, with a radical approach. Use an air-cooled radial engine instead of the conventional liquid-cooled inline engine. The choice of a radial engine was controversial. Radial engines were larger and created more drag, but they offered significant advantages. They were more reliable, less vulnerable to battle damage, and required less cooling infrastructure. Tank chose the BMW 139 radial engine for his prototype, but this would soon evolve into the legendary BMW 801. The first prototype, designated FW-190V1, took to the skies on June 1, 1939. Test pilot Hans Sander was immediately impressed by the aircraft's handling characteristics. The wide-track landing gear made takeoffs and landings far easier than the Bf-109. The visibility from the spacious cockpit was excellent, but there was a critical problem. The engine was overheating. The BMW 139 simply couldn't shed enough heat in its tight cowling. Engineers tried everything, different cowling designs, various cooling configurations, even redesigning the propeller spinner. Nothing worked adequately. The solution came with switching to the newer BMW 801 engine and completely redesigning the cooling system with a sophisticated ducted fan system behind the propeller. By mid-1941, the FW-190A1 was ready for combat operations. Armed with 2 MG-17 machine guns in the cowling and 2 MG-FF cannons in the wing roots, it packed formidable firepower, but its most impressive feature was its performance. At low to medium altitudes, the FW-190 could outperform any Allied fighter then in service. August 1941. JG-26, one of the Luftwaffe's elite fighter wings, began receiving the first operational FW-190S. The unit, based along the French coast, was commanded by Adolf Galland, one of Germany's top aces. Initial reception was mixed. Pilots were accustomed to the Baf-109 and skeptical of the radial-engined newcomer. That skepticism evaporated on September 18, 1941, when FW-190S encountered RAF Spitfire mech with fees over the Channel. The British pilots were shocked. The new German fighter could outclimb them, outroll them, and outdive them. In the words of one RAF pilot, it was like being mugged by a stranger you didn't know existed. The FW-190's advantages were numerous. Its wide-track landing gear made it stable during takeoffs and landings. The electric trim system allowed pilots to adjust the aircraft in flight without manual effort. The powered controls were lighter than the Spitfires, reducing pilot fatigue, and the BMW 801 radial engine could take tremendous battle damage and keep running. Throughout late 1941 and into 1942, the Focke 190 established air superiority over the Channel. RAF losses mounted. During Operation Jubilee, the disastrous Dieppe raid of August 1942, Fw 190 SS helped shoot down 106 Allied aircraft while losing only 48 of their own. British pilots called this period the Focke Wulf scourge. The British response was urgent. RAF Fighter Command needed to understand this new threat. In June 1942, they got their chance when Oberleutnant Armin Faber, disoriented after combat, accidentally landed his Fw 190 A3 at RAF Pembrey in Wales, believing it to be occupied France. The Fw 190 evolved rapidly throughout the war. The A-series represented the main production line, with each subvariant bringing improvements. The A2 added MG 151 cannons in the wing roots, replacing the less effective MG-FF. The A3 improved the engine mounting and added additional armour protection. But the most significant variant was the A4, introduced in late 1942. This version featured a methanol water injection system, MW50, that boosted the BMW 801 D2 engine's power to 2,100 horsepower for short periods. The A4 also standardized the underwing rack system, allowing the aircraft to carry bombs or additional fuel tanks. The A5 featured a relocated engine mount that moved the power plant forward by 15 centimeters, improving the aircraft's center of gravity and handling. This version could carry heavier armament in the outer wing panels. Some A5S were fitted with 2 additional MG 151 cannons in the outer wings, giving them a total of 4 cannons and 2 machine guns. The A6 became the most heavily armed variant. It featured a completely revised wing structure designed to accept various weapons packages, designated Rüstsatze, field conversion kits. Some A6S carried 2 MG 151 cannons in the wing roots and 4 more in the outer wings, 6 cannons total, making them devastating bomber destroyers. The A7 introduced the BMW 801 D2 engine as standard and improved radio equipment. But the most produced variant was the A8, which appeared in early 1944. The A8 featured increased fuel capacity, additional armour protection, and could carry an even wider array of weapons. Many A80S were equipped with the devastating Mk 108-30mm cannon in the outer wings. One of the Fw 190's greatest strengths was its versatility. While designed as a pure fighter, it proved equally capable in the ground attack role. The aircraft's sturdy construction, powerful engine, and stable flying characteristics made it an excellent bomb platform. On the Eastern Front, specially equipped Fw 190 F and G models served as dedicated ground attack aircraft. These variants, called Schlachtflugzeug, battle aircraft, featured additional armour protection for the pilot and engine, reduced armament to save weight, and strengthened wings for carrying bombs, rockets, and other ordnance. The Fw 190 could carry a remarkable variety of weapons: SC-250 bombs, South Carolina 500 bombs, the devastating SD-500 fragmentation bomb, 21 cm WFR.GR.21 rockets for breaking up bomber formations, and 28 cm rockets for ground targets. Some variants even tested the 30mm Mk 103 cannon in an underwing pod for destroying tanks. In the fighter-bomber role known as Jabo, the FW-190 proved highly effective. Fast, heavily armed, and capable of defending itself after releasing its bombs, the Jabo FW-190S wreaked havoc on Allied targets in 1942 and 1943. They struck coastal towns, shipping, and military installations with devastating hit-and-run attacks. The most famous Jabo mission came on January 1, 1943, when FWW-190S of SKG-10 struck London in broad daylight, hitting targets including a school where 44 children died. The raid demonstrated the aircraft's capability, but was controversial even among German pilots due to the civilian casualties. On the Eastern Front, the FW-190 found a different kind of war. Here, air combat often took place at low altitude, where the FW-190's performance was superior. Soviet fighters like the Yak-9 and La-5 were formidable opponents, but properly flown FW-190S held their own. German ace Erich Rudolfer flew the FW-190 extensively on the Eastern Front, achieving many of his 222 victories in the aircraft. He praised its ruggedness and firepower, essential qualities when facing waves of Soviet aircraft. The wide landing gear proved invaluable on rough Eastern Front airfields, often nothing more than cleared fields. The ground attack variants, the F and G models, were heavily employed against Soviet armour. During the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, FW-190S attacked Soviet tank concentrations with bombs and rockets. The heavily armoured Il-2 Sturmovik was a frequent opponent, and special tactics were developed for attacking these tough Soviet ground attack aircraft. Winter operations presented unique challenges. The FW-190's BMW 801 radial engine, with its air cooling, actually had advantages in extreme cold compared to liquid-cooled engines. However, the aircraft required special winter preparations, including engine preheating, specialized lubricants, and often white camouflage paint applied directly over the standard scheme. By 1943, the strategic bombing campaign against Germany intensified. American B-17 and B-24 bombers flew in massive formations, protected by their own defensive armament and, later, long-range fighters. The Luftwaffe needed specialized fighters to break up these formations, and the FW-190 was adapted for this critical role. The FW-190A6 and later variants were equipped with heavy armament specifically for bomber destruction. The standard Sturmbock battering ram configuration included additional armor plate, protecting the pilot and engine, along with heavily increased firepower. 4 MG 151 20th cannons plus 2 or 4 Mk 100 and 830 mm cannons could shred a bomber with a single firing pass. Sturmstaffel 1, formed in 1943, pioneered the close-range attack tactics. Flying heavily armoured and armed FW-100 and 90S, they would approach bomber formations and press attacks to point-blank range, sometimes as close as 100 metres, to ensure kills. This required nerves of steel, as the combined defensive fire of a bomber formation was devastating. The most devastating weapon carried by FW-190S was the Werfer Granit 21 WFR.GUAR.21 rocket. These 21 cm rockets, carried in tubes under the wings, were fired from outside the range of bomber defensive guns. While inaccurate, they were effective at breaking up tight formations, allowing conventional fighters to pick off individual bombers. However, by late 1943, the introduction of the P-51 Mustang changed everything. The long-range American escort fighters could now accompany bombers all the way to their targets and back. the heavily armoured bomber-destroyer FW-190S, while deadly against bombers, were vulnerable to the more agile American fighters. Losses among Sturm units became catastrophic. By 1944, the BMW 801 radial engine had reached its development limits. The FW-190 needed more power, especially at high altitude where American escort fighters operated. The solution was radical: replace the radial engine with a liquid-cooled inline engine. The result was the FW-190D9, nicknamed Dora or Longnose, due to its extended nose housing the Junkers Jumo 213A1 engine. This 1,776 horsepower inverted V12 engine transformed the aircraft's high-altitude performance. The D9 could reach 426 miles per hour at 21,650 feet, making it competitive with the best Allied fighters. The D9 first entered service in September 1944 with JG-54 Grünherz, Green Hearts, on the Eastern Front. Pilots immediately noticed the improved high-altitude performance and speed. The aircraft retained the excellent roll rate and robust construction of earlier FW-100 and 90S, while gaining speed and climb rate. In the hands of experienced pilots, the D9 was formidable. It could engage P-51 Mustangs and Supermarine Spitfire Memkir-240s on roughly equal terms. The combination of the FW-190's excellent handling with improved high-altitude performance made it one of the finest piston engine fighters of the war. However, by late 1944, the Luftwaffe faced crippling shortages of fuel, experienced pilots, and time. Even excellent aircraft like the FW-190D9 couldn't overcome these fundamental problems. Many D9S were destroyed on the ground, unable to fly due to fuel shortages, or lost with inexperienced pilots who couldn't exploit the aircraft's capabilities. The ultimate expression of the D-series was the D12 and D13 variants, featuring the even more powerful Jumo 213F engine with three-stage supercharging. These could reach speeds of 452 miles per hour, making them among the fastest piston fighters of the war. However, very few were completed before war's end. Kurt Tank's ultimate development of his fighter was the TAR-152, a high-altitude interceptor designed to combat American B-29 bombers expected to be deployed in Europe. The TAR-152H, Hohe height, featured an extended wingspan pressurized cockpit and the powerful Jumo 213E engine with MW-50 boost. With a service ceiling of 49,000 feet and a top speed of 472 miles per hour at high altitude, the TAR-152H was the highest performance piston fighter produced by Germany. At altitude, it was faster than any Allied fighter. However, fewer than 50 were completed before the war ended. Oberleutnant Joseph Sepp Kitz of JG 301 scored the TAR-152's only confirmed air-to-air victories on April 14, 1945, shooting down 2 P-51 Mustangs. The aircraft's potential was clear, but it arrived far too late to affect the war's outcome. The Focke Wulf 190 was one of World War II's outstanding fighters. Over 20,000 were built in all variants, serving from 1941 to war's end. It proved adaptable, serving as air superiority fighter, fighter bomber, ground attack aircraft, night fighter, and reconnaissance platform. After the war, captured FW-190S were extensively tested by the Allies. The United States evaluated numerous examples, comparing them against American fighters. The Soviet Union also captured many examples and used them to improve their own aircraft designs. France briefly operated captured FW-190S after liberation. The FW-190's influence extended beyond the war. Its design philosophy, combining ease of maintenance, heavy armament, sturdy construction, and pilot-friendly handling, influenced post-war fighters. The concept of a versatile fighter capable of multiple roles became standard in fighter design. Kurt Tank himself survived the war and continued his career, eventually working on fighter design in Argentina and India. He never forgot his most successful creation, stating in later years that the FW-190 was the finest aircraft I ever designed. The Focke Wulf. 190 remains one of aviation history's great fighters. From its combat debut over the English Channel to the desperate defence of the Reich, it earned the respect of every pilot who faced it and the devotion of every pilot who flew it. Allied pilots learned to fear the distinctive sound of its BMW 801 radial engine and the sight of its wide-tracked landing gear. German pilots praised its robustness, firepower, and handling. It was, in many ways, the perfect fighter for its time. Today, only a handful of FW-190s survive in museums and private collections around the world. A few have been painstakingly restored to flying condition, allowing modern audiences to witness the grace and power that made this aircraft legendary. The Focke Wulf 190 stands as a testament to innovative engineering, excellent design, and the bravery of the pilots who flew it. It was the German fighter that terrified Allied pilots, and 75 years after the war's end, it continues to command respect and fascination from aviation enthusiasts worldwide.